Hello, I'm Scott Brady with Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, and we're going to do the walk around of the Ineos Grenadier that we are using to cross Africa. I have actually been driving this vehicle now for almost 12,000 kilometers, and we have gone through a big chunk of South Africa all the way down to Cape Agulhas in the southernmost point in Africa, up the Eastern Cape, and then into Mozambique. And we're currently in Tofu Beach, at Tofu Beach in Mozambique, and we're spending a couple days getting some work done, and this gives us the opportunity to do this detailed walk around of the vehicle. Just a couple specs before we get started. So this is the Fieldmaster model. So this has a leather interior. It does not have the dual battery system, which is what we're addressing with Red Arc. And then we've got some additional components from Garmin, and we've also got components from Front Runner, Dometic, and others. So we're going to go through all of those details of how we modified the vehicle. But the essential consideration is that we did not modify the Grenadier much, and that's for two reasons. First of all, the Grenadier comes out of the box with a lot of capability. And the second thing is we really want to see how this unit works. We want to see how it performs on long trips. And if I heavily modify the vehicle right out of the gate, I'm never going to get a sense for how it does in stock form. We may make other changes to the vehicle as we go along. We may need to change the tires for going up the Western Africa route, etc. But for right now, the vehicle itself is essentially stock. And then we'll go through the few accessories and modifications that we've done in this detailed walk around. Okay, so we'll talk about the items that I have accessible here to the driver. They're very simple. In the door card, I've got a couple hats. This hat here might look familiar. Wear that one a bit, and I have extras along just in case. I've also got a couple of leather gloves. I use these leather gloves because my dad buys them for me for my birthday every year, and I get to bring a little piece of him along with me. And then I've also got a headlamp, and I've also got a Surefire light, all accessible in the driver door, because this is stuff that you need access to on a regular basis. And then underneath the driver's seat is a couple things that I like to have. This is actually a version of a machete, so you can use it for chopping wood, and I'm sure you can let your imagination drift into other uses you may need that for. And then there's also the factory toolkit. So this is the factory Ineos toolkit, which has got your tire irons, some basic tools in here, a screwdriver for removing the winch cover on the front bumper. This is all very easily accessible. It's also got a set of pliers. It's actually a pretty decent toolkit. And then that way we don't have to dig out our main toolkit. This is all easily accessible under the driver's seat. We always need to have a little bit of toilet paper along with us. It might as well be accessible. It's also on the same side as the spade. And then it's always a good idea to have a fire extinguisher with you. And then many of the countries that we're traveling in require a fire extinguisher. I'm actually considering adding a second one back in the kitchen, about the same size, but you need to have a fire extinguisher easily accessible in the vehicle. And it just tucks perfectly in this hidden space underneath the seat. And that's one of the advantages of these all mechanical Recaro seats, is that they don't have all those motors and other control modules underneath the seat that takes up that space. So I can actually carry all of these additional items tucked quick and accessible right under the driver's seat. So on the driver's side, rear doors, we keep a couple things. It's with all the driving, time sitting in the vehicle, I just find that my life improves when I'm active. So it's really important for me to exercise. I haven't been able to do it every day, but there were long stretches when I was in South Africa where I was able to do it every day. And I use a TRX for that. It straps to the roof rack, or you can put it over the door frame in an accommodation that you're staying in. And it's a very compact and simple system. It uses body weight exercises. So you just kind of unfurl it here, and then you can strap it over the front runner rack. It easily takes my weight, and there's a couple carabiners there to strap it over the rack. And then you can adjust these straps and handles to do body weight exercises, pulling, pushing exercises. And then the nice thing is it's super compact and again fits in this door cubby. And the other thing that I keep inside here is a resistance band. It's really easy to take the resistance band, put it over your foot, and then you're able to do additional exercise compound movements, higher frequency movements than you may be able to do with body weight, or if the body weight's too much. And that all fits inside this cubby. And with having both of them, it would allow Joe and I to alternate between exercises when we're out in the field. But the key is to keep yourself moving. We want to be moving every day. We want to be trying to hit our steps. We want to be trying to get in physical movement every day. And sometimes you take it in the form that you can get it. Like one of the places that we're staying at right now, you can do different forms of yoga, which is really good. I find that I need to do some additional stretching. So you can find exercise where you need it. And then this is the full extent of our toolkit. Again, because I was traveling by air, I couldn't bring everything in the kitchen sink with me, so I needed to source tools locally. And fortunately, Joe had a good contact in Cape Town with Tang Tools, high quality tool brand. Not the most expensive, but it's a premium tool brand, so you can kind of trust the equipment when you're out in the field. And we removed it from the formed box that it came in, and we were able to fit everything into this Melville and Moon canvas zipper bag, tool bag. There's a tool roll inside too. We'll show you the contents of that in a second. For the sake of simplicity, I have the tools that I feel comfortable bringing along. Toolkits vary greatly by individual and by their comfort with risk, or with maybe the possibility of not having exactly what you need. If you try to bring everything that you could possibly need, then the vehicle's too heavy. So in my experience, this is the kind of toolkit that I have felt comfortable with. Based on the country, there's different requirements that can include safety vests. We have 2 safety vests since we have 2 occupants in the vehicle. Some countries require 1 emergency triangle, but others require 2. So we have 2 inside this kit. Inside this small triple-aught design sailcloth bag, I've got smaller items like Allen keys. You can see all of the electrical connections that I've got. I've also got all of the sockets in there, and I can keep all of those items in one place so I know where to grab them out of. I've also got a tool roll here. This is from Melville and Moon. It's just really nice quality. You don't need to have this fancy of a tool roll, but I like it. And inside of there, we've got a bunch of different pliers, snips, adjustable wrenches, and also the wrenches that came in the Tang toolkit. And then everything just kind of folds up, rolls up. Then we have a multimeter. We always got to be able to diagnose electrical issues. Hammer's important. These are the strainers and the various adapters for the funnel. We've got metal epoxy. We've got some additional wiring, blades, screwdrivers, tape measure. We also have an OBD2 reader, so we can check codes. We have some rescue tape, some 100-mile-an-hour tape, zip ties, other essential items that we need to have along with us. And these are 2 18.9 liter or 5-gallon giant loop fuel bladders. And they, again, you can see how small they get when they don't have fuel in them. So for during longer crossings, or where there's questionable fuel availability or even questionable fuel quality, I can fill up the 40 liters on the rack, and then an additional almost 40 liters in these fuel bladders, and then store these forward on the rack. And then, of course, with fuel weight, as soon as you get to a point where you can transfer fuel, you can start that process of transferring fuel and getting the weight up off of the top. But they strap together easily, goes behind the seat, tools go on top of it. Super clever product. You really don't want to store it in the bladders inside the vehicle unless it's diesel, just for safety. I have done things like that in the past, but I wouldn't recommend it. Just strap it down to the roof rack. And then I've also got a fuel funnel. This can be used for an oil funnel, fuel funnel, There's a bunch of different inserts with it that come in, that I've got inside the tool bag, that actually allows it to strain the fuel. So you can, couple advantages. When fuel's being dumped into the vehicle from maybe a questionable source, you can first of all verify the fuel type. So even if they told you that it's unleaded, you can verify the fuel type. You can also see if there are particulates in the fuel. You can also see if water's starting to separate. By giving it that dwell time in the funnel through the strainer, you can actually keep a very close eye on the quality of fuel. And then it also helps the people that are filling you up to know that you're paying attention to the quality of the fuel that's going into your vehicle. So these funnels are important. They're used for a lot of different things, and those inserts are key. And then the last item that we've got here kind of on the tool side is the Indeflate. This is actually designed, manufactured in South Africa. It's a great product. I use it in the United States. They come in either 2-hose or 4-hose configurations. I like the 2-hose configuration. The 4 is a little more clever, but it takes up additional space, weighs more. And it locks onto the 2 tires. So if you do the 2 tires on one axle, it allows you to balance the pressure between the 2. So a good example of that would be your compressor stops working and you have one tire that's losing pressure, but you've only got maybe 10 miles to go to make it to a gas station. You can balance the pressure between the 2 tires, go a little bit further, and then you can balance the pressure between a rear tire and a front tire to get a little further, and it can hopefully get you back to where you need to be. But it also allows you to perfectly balance the pressure across the axle, which reduces heat and damage to the differentials. You want to make sure that those tires on the same axle are at the same pressure. And then within a small range, you actually need to make sure that the pressures are similar front to rear on an all-wheel drive vehicle like the Grenadier. It uses an electronic pressure gauge, which shows down to 1/10 of a PSI. You can also change it to other different readings. But for me personally, I would prefer that it be a mechanical gauge. I've never had one create an issue, but I like mechanical gauges. I don't find that I need to have that precise of an air pressure reading down to 1/10. When it's also got a dump valve, so when you're airing down, it's very quick. You just pull this collar back like that, and it lets the air pressure out. I mean, you can see this has been sitting in here for days, and it held the pressure in the lines. But it's a very quick way to air down. We got stuck the other day in the sand. I got stuck the other day in the sand. Don't want to attach Joe to that. He filmed me being stuck in the sand because I hadn't aired down yet. And part of that is the fun of learning what the limits are of the vehicle. So I knew I had all these tools with me, so let's see how the vehicle does at street pressure in the sand. It did fine as long as I was moving, but I lost some momentum and I got stuck. So I used the Indeflate, got the tires down to 18 PSI front and rear, and the vehicle just crawled right out of the stuck situation. So very useful tool. So we're going to talk about the navigation solutions that we use here in the Grenadier. It's possible to run Apple CarPlay, where you can display, like for example, Gaia, possibly even with satellite imagery. But the primary tool that we use for navigation is the Garmin Tread device. This is an 8-inch screen, so it's big enough where we have good detail and a larger overall operating area, but it's not so big that it really blocks the view for the driver or the passenger. It's on a suction cup mount, so that way you can tilt it towards the driver or towards the passenger. There's a couple different things here. You can put in where you want to go. With Tracks for Africa as the base map, you can actually do turn-by-turn directions here in Africa. That's been helpful if you're trying to navigate to an iOverlander point or to a Tracks for Africa point. Under the Where To, you can access the iOverlander. So you can look for camping, lodging, services, other community items, other categories as well. So there's a lot of really important information that's available right here on the Garmin, and that's our primary tool that we use for navigation. So one item that we also elected to install in the vehicle, mostly for our own record and for a little bit of safety, is a dash cam. It has two cameras on it. It points to the inside towards the occupants, and then it also points forward of the vehicle on a wide angle. It records in high definition, and it also has accident detection, so it'll automatically record a clip if some major force hits the vehicle, like we hit a pothole that started it up the other day. But it's constantly running, and it just loops back over on the micro SD card on the inside. There's an app for it that you can use to view the clips and save the clips, and we've used that already to review some of the trails that we were on, and even a close call with a Hilux. So we were able to use that information. And then of course we always have paper maps with us. They're just in the seat back pocket behind the passenger. It's really easy to grab those. It's a great way to start the day or to kind of do some route planning. We've got such good electronic mapping and redundancy that we really haven't needed to use the paper maps, but if for some reason there was to be selective availability for GPS and we were to lose access to GPS, you need to be able to have paper maps with you to get to your next location. Okay, so let's talk about this front runner rack. One of the things that I love about the Grenadier is the fact that it has these safari windows, and they can be completely removed, and you can stand on the seats, stand on the seat covers, and I can take photographs of game. Most of the game parks in Africa, you can't get out of the vehicle. So this gives a great vantage point, and you're at eye level with elephants and other things, but quickly back down inside the vehicle if you need to move. So the reason that we went with a 3/4 rack from Front Runner is because the factory rack is full length, which creates a couple considerations. You can't use the safari windows at all. They won't even pop up into the up position, and then you can't remove them entirely. If you do go with a Front Runner full length rack, you can actually delete these crossbars. It's one of the clever components of the design of the Front Runner rack, is that you could go with a full length rack and then remove the cross slats just over the windows, so you can pop them up or remove them. But I really like this 3/4 rack. I don't need a full length rack. I just have a few accessories that I need to mount here. So we've got this very large, it's a 1.6 wide basket, and it's quite long, 3/4 length. You could actually sleep up top here. I've got 4 Maxtrax on Maxtrax pins. I have 4 Front Runner box mounts. If we were bringing along additional passengers, like let's say we had 4 or 5 people in the vehicle for some reason, we could move all of the boxes from the back onto the rack far forward to make space for additional load. We do have one box up here. It's essentially empty. There's a large duffel bag that I have rolled up inside here, so it hasn't added any weight per se. And then we've got 40 liters of fuel over the driver's side and 20 liters of water over the passenger side. And then the 20-liter water can actually has a little arm that swings out so that you can use the tappet as a shower, easily fill up water bottles, other things that you need to do from the water in the back. We've also got a shovel mount on one side for a small spade. The spade also has a sharp edge, so you can use it for chopping firewood as a backup to the machete that I have along with me. We've also got some handles on the side of the rack, which is really nice for getting access to the rack or holding onto the side of the vehicle, gaining access into the back of the vehicle for camping. And then one of the things that's really nice is this large camp table that slides underneath the rack. It's very useful in camp. It does add about 28 pounds to the rack. And then if you don't keep it adjusted right, it can vibrate a little bit, get a little bit of noise. So you have to stay on top of that. It's the only place we've had noise on the rack is from that, but we were able to adjust it away for the most part. So overall, this rack is working perfect for our trip and our needs. And you really don't want to put much more weight up here than this. Even this whole system is just under 200 pounds. The dynamic roof load rating for the Grenadier is much higher than most vehicles in the segment at 330 pounds, but that's way more than I would feel comfortable putting on top of a vehicle for safety reasons. If you need to do an accident avoidance maneuver, you want to keep that weight low. So I've got about 200 pounds up on the top when everything's filled up. And one of the things that I forgot to mention, but is a really important factor, is that this 3/4 rack is essentially silent. I don't hear, with the windows closed, I don't hear any wind noise from the rack. The factory rack does make some noise. In fact, any full-length rack is going to make a degree of noise because it's right over those Safari windows. So I love the fact that this rack does not add to driver fatigue when I'm on such a long trip. It's essentially silent. So let's talk through the back of the Grenadier. One of our goals was to be able to sleep inside the vehicle. From my perspective, there's a lot of advantages for that. If you're sleeping in game parks, it gives you a little bit more security. If you're having to rock up and sleep in a gas station, it also gives you a little bit more security. You're able to take advantage of the sound deadening, the weather resistance, the security, and the ease of use of sleeping inside of the vehicle. It's very quiet, and I've slept inside the vehicle already, very, very comfortable. So the goal was to create this lightweight platform, which Front Runner was very generous to do. This is a prototype. They may never make it available to consumers, I'm not sure, but it's only about 8 kilograms of aluminum in the frame, and then there's some more weight in this wood top with the carpeting. But they constructed it in a way that it fits 2 of the Front Runner boxes side by side, and then it goes 2 deep, so there's 4 total. And then we just use a simple stratchet to hold everything in place so it's not sliding around while we're off highway. And then that gives a convenient little spot to put our paper towels for camp. There's additional lashing points that we can use to secure our items on top of the load deck. But it gives, with the seats pushed forward all the way on the tracks, and then the seat backs also push forward, there's enough room for Joe to sleep in here, and Joe's 6'7". So I'm very comfortable at 6'1". I don't even need to push the seat as far forward. And then I use just one of my soft bags that I have full of clothing to fill the space between the end of the load platform and the start of the back of the front seats. So it makes it really, really comfortable. The goal was to keep the weight to a minimum and allow us to conveniently access all of these goods. Here's the other advantage of a load floor like this over a drawer system. Drawers are really nice. It's not to say that drawers aren't a good choice. In our case, we wanted to minimize the weight. That was the first primary goal, minimize the weights, particularly this far back in the vehicle, because we have the fuel and the water on top. So we wanted to minimize the weight, but then I can also remove these boxes completely. So there's been times when we've been staying in simple accommodations like we are here in Tofu, Mozambique, and you can remove the kitchen boxes, the food boxes easily into the little kitchens, or if there's no kitchen, we have all of the camping equipment. It's very easy to move that gear in and out of the back of the vehicle. But overall, I'm super pleased with how this load platform works. And then if I do have additional people coming along, like if I've got guests, or if Joe and I have people along with us, or we need to move someone for some reason, we can actually fold that load floor back. It's on hinges, it folds all the way back and over on top of this rear load floor, and then the seat backs can come up and you're back into a 5-passenger wagon configuration. So for sleeping, we have 2 Melville and Moon bedrolls. They have a built-in, probably about 1.5 inches or so thick mattress that rolls up pretty tight. And on this flat load floor, it's plenty comfortable. It's got a wax canvas cover. So if you were sleeping on a rack, or if you were sleeping out on the ground and you got some light rain, it would keep it from soaking through. In fact, we even accidentally dumped a little bit of water on the bedroll, and it just sat there in a pool. It never actually soaked in. It's not so much a blanket, although the cover itself does provide a little bit of insulation. When we were camping on the beach the other day in Mozambique, it was cool and there was a high wind, and it was enough for me if you're traveling in colder conditions, or if you're moving into extreme southern Africa, or maybe in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, you'd want to have some additional blankets. And I bring a small rumple along for that I can slide inside of the bedroll. It's nice and wide. There's tons of room, and Joe has used it a lot more than I have. So he's got some great insights of the fact that there's all this extra material. So you can actually bring your knees up, or you can even sit up against the back of the seats and work in the bedroll. You can easily kind of roll around inside of it. There's a lot of room, so you don't feel like you're so constrained. It's a very comfortable bedroll. I like it, and I think it's going to be really great for us through Africa. I'm going to be going on this next segment by myself, so I'm going to actually leave the bedroll in place. It's what we did on Expedition 7. We just left the beds set up and we put our soft luggage on top of it and strap it down. So I'm actually going to leave the bedroll in place, and then it doesn't take any time to set up camp at the end of the day to get some good sleep. When I'm traveling in warmer climates like this, you really don't need much of a blanket. Early on the trip, it was actually very cold and we would have needed the blanket, but I just use this very simple rumple. It's their new blanket that actually has some fire retardancy on it. So you can use it around the fire without holes being burned into it from the embers. And it's quite warm actually. And then I've got along with me my Nemo pillow. These are my favorite pillows. They're not a sponsor or an advertiser or anything like that, but I have used this pillow for the last 13 years. And you just strip out the inflatable inside and you throw it in the washer. It's got like a fleece liner on it. It inflates with this mouthpiece here. And then you can, originally it came with these kind of cross webbing that you could shove a jacket into to provide some additional height. But this thing's been with me. It's kind of like my whoopee blanket, I guess, now after all these years. It's nice to have it along to complete this big journey with me. Okay, so to talk a little bit more about camping, food access, we elected to go with the smallest of the Dometic CFX fridges. I'm really comfortable going with a smaller fridge. 35 seems to be the sweet spot, but because I'm really happy eating local foods and also not keeping a lot of meat stored in a fridge, I actually went with a 25 liter. And I'm super happy that we did. It's easy to move the fridge around. It allows for a lot more space in the back. It weighs less. And one of the things that I found with fridges, and it's surprising, I don't know if anybody has ever weighed their fridge when it's full, but it can actually be a big source of load inside the vehicle. So by going with a 25 liter fridge, I'm taking into consideration that Parkinson's law where you're gonna fill to the available space. So if you start off with a 60 liter fridge or a 75 or an 80, you're gonna go ahead and fill it up full of food. Surprisingly, if you start with a 25, it works just fine. I feed drinks into it. We've been able to carry meat and vegetables, and I've got lots of chocolate in there too, but it allows for us to easily carry the food that we want to keep cold, the drinks that we want to keep cold, and then feed into it slowly from our dry goods storage. So it works out really well with a 25 liter. It also uses a lot less power, so it allows us to camp for longer periods of time without having to run the vehicle or recharge. These boxes are very convenient. We keep all of our kind of hard camping goods in this one. So that's going to be all of our plates, bowls, etc. We've even got a blender in there. I do like to start the day oftentimes with just a really healthy shake. And then on this side, we've got protein powders and dry goods, oils, spices, all those other things, kind of that bulk dry good food storage. And then we also use from Melville and Moon, there's an insert that we use to store some additional dry goods like fruits and vegetables. We'll put in that soft bag up top here because it's very lightweight stuff. So this is actually a soft cooler insert that goes in one of the Melville and Moon bags, but I'm using that actually for my camera bag. So this becomes one of our dry food storage bags. And I've got extra oat milk, and we've even got some mushroom keto coffee, and we've got some biltong, which is beef jerky, and some other items in there. We're a little light on groceries right now. We'll be topping off tomorrow. but that's one of the ways that we can keep our food store. And then it just slides nice up against the fridge. We've got another box, and this one is actually the vehicle spares that we bring along. So it keeps this heavy box down low and far forward. And we've got it all tightly organized, but we've got some additional lashing straps in here, but we've got critical items like filters. So we've got an air filter, we have a cabin filter, we have an extra set of brake pads. We also have an engine filter. We have some replacement jounces, and then some critical components, because the Grenadier is an automatic. So if you were to lose a starter, you can't just bump start it. So I actually have a starter and an alternator inside this box here. If for some reason, these are high quality components, they don't tend to fail on a new vehicle like this, but if the starter was to fail because of multiple water crossings where I'm getting a lot of debris into the starter, water into the starter, that is a scenario that can cause a new starter to fail. And then you're really stuck wherever you're at. So I made sure that I have an extra starter along. Same with the alternator. I've had alternators fail on vehicles in the past because of deep water crossings. So those are two items that are easy to replace that I can do in the field. Just next to our kitchen box is one of our dry goods storage boxes. And in here is where we keep a lot of our protein. I do like to drink shakes in the morning. So I've got a combination of whey protein and like a superfood protein. We've got honey, we've got olive oil, we've got some granola for breakfast, a little amarula if necessary. In South Africa, they've got these amazing little superfood packets that I'll throw in for the morning smoothie. I've got some single origin cacao, and then I've got some creatine and branched chain amino acids that it also tastes really good. It's kind of how I start the morning. Keep the brain and body fresh. And then behind that, for when we're cooking, and actually behind that, we've got one of these really nice hammocks. All right, and then behind the dry goods storage is what we use for cooking. It's really easy to, in fact, there's so many great stoves out there. There's wonderful options in North America. Using a propane stove with refillable canisters is a great way to do it. But in a place like a continent like Africa, one of the best options is just these simple butane stoves. So they store in these plastic cases. They cost maybe the equivalent of $20, $25. And then you slide in these replaceable canisters, and they're available in essentially every country in Africa. So they're very easy to obtain. They're very cheap to find. They're used by a lot of families in Africa. So it's an easy fuel source, and I don't need more than a single burner. And if it breaks, it's easy to replace and find a new one. And then I've got some additional basic cooking items in here too. Okay, so then I've got another little ditty bag here. Body wipes are really key. You always want to have a bunch of those if you can't take a shower or if you're running low on water. And then I use a rechargeable Surefire headlamp. I have a backup headlamp in here too. And then you really want to make sure that when you're moving around at night that you've got a mosquito net. I just put it right over my hat and keeps it away from my face and allows me to move around in dawn and dusk without the worry of so many mosquito bites. Okay, so this shows the full platform. Again, we would slide the seats forward and the seat backs would tilt forward. But this entire panel here is on a hinge and it swings up and out of the way. And it actually is just precisely made enough that it kind of can be held up against the top. So it can work as a load barrier. The seat backs will go up, or it can go all the way back down on top of the rear load floor. And then we are able to store some additional items in here. So I have like a replacement engine oil pan. We have our deflation system. I've got a super siphon hose for moving fuel from the cans up top down into the fuel tank, and then I use one of these Colfax Design Work messenger bags to store a bunch of documents that I don't need access to a lot. So these are, after I've gone through a border, I move those documents and receipts and everything else like that into this bag, and I can just keep it up underneath the load floor. We've got a bride grate and some tongs, and then this is actually important to talk about. Longer sections of the trip where we need to bring additional water, we always bring drinking water, and then we have water on top of the rack. We have 20 liters up there, but this allows us to bring additional water in a soft and foldable, rollable water bladder. So these MSR dromedary bags are key, and it allows you to fill them up with water and then stick them down in the footwell to get that weight really low. Right now it's just being used as a way to isolate the bry grill from rattling. But multi-purpose, and when you're not filled with water, when you don't have it filled up with water for more remote sections, then it doesn't take up any space at all. And in this case, it's actually being used for something else. So since the unit that we are using is a Fieldmaster, it came with leather seats. They're beautiful leather seats, Recaros. One of the things I like about the seats is that they don't have any electronics built into them other than the heated seat portion of it. So they're all mechanical. They mechanical slide, mechanical tilt. The headrest moves mechanically, so none of those things to fail. But because it's leather, it can be quite hot and humid in these climates like we're coming into in Central Africa. So the best thing you can do is to upgrade with some cloth seat covers. There's many great brands on the market, but the one that Ineos actually uses is Melville and Moon, and it's a brand I've long admired. It's considered one of the highest quality canvas seat covers that you can buy, and they've got some nice touches like these little leather inserts, and it fits the seats just perfect and provides a ton of additional storage. One of the things that I don't care for about the factory seat is that there's no pocket on the back for vehicle documents. In fact, there's not really a great place to store vehicle documents in the vehicle. So by having seat back pockets on these seat covers, in fact, in each seat back, there is a very deep pocket, so I can have legal length documents like the Carnet de Passage, but then it's also got a larger zipper pocket that we can put cables and other items we need quick access to. And then it has a very small pocket that you can put easy to lose items. Like let's say maybe you want your AirPods in there for when you're sleeping, you can tuck those into there. So for solo travel like this, we do need recovery equipment, primarily around self-recovery, using the Maxtrax or using the vehicle mounted winch. But then it also gives us the ability to assist others using a recovery strap. So we sourced all of our recovery equipment in South Africa, and the Tough Dog stuff was available. So this is a recovery strap here. We have a pulley block. We have a big winch extension strap. So this is going to be made from polyester so that it doesn't stretch or that it has null stretch, and it really allows us to extend those winching operations because again we're a solo vehicle. And then we've got a couple shackles, soft shackles. We have a tree strap, again also made from polyester, and these are all properly rated to the weight of the vehicle, 10,000 kilogram minimum braking strength. And then really important piece, this is from Extreme Outback Products. I've used these tire repair kits for probably the last 15 years. They go with me on every single trip, and it allows for me to do extensive repairs to tires, including actually having components in here to do large patches or actually to sew the tire carcass closed using wire. And then it's got really heavy duty plunger, really heavy duty and appropriate quality fibers that go in. And then we've got a winch sail in here too, which can be used for lots of different things. But it all stored inside these ether bags. I like these ether duffels because they're fairly small so that, again, you don't overpack them. And then they're also weather resistant. And then they have these heavy cinching straps on the top so you can get everything really locked down so it fits tight behind the seat. So in addition to the recovery kit that we have, we also brought along 4 Maxtrax. Maxtrax is something that I've used on all of my big trips, and they allow for very expedient self-recovery, and they can be used in conjunction with the winch if it's a very difficult recovery. It allows you to easily assist others without putting your own vehicle at risk. So there's a lot of advantages to the Maxtrax. They weigh about 30 pounds for a set of 4. We have them mounted up on top of the front runner rack on the Maxtrax pins. And then we also bring along a compressor. This is just kind of a standard compressor. One of the challenges of me flying into South Africa is I couldn't bring everything that I wanted to bring along. There are other compressors that I would have chosen, but this is a 100% duty cycle. That's a less expensive compressor, and I've actually used these kinds of compressors on several trips, and I've never had one fail me. But it's important to bring along a compressor because we are airing down and airing up quite a bit as we move through the sand dunes and other areas. Sometimes it's easy to access compressors at gas stations, but if you have a flat or you need to do a tire repair or you're remote in the field and you need to be adjusting tire pressures, got to have your own compressor with you. So it all fits into this bag and stores behind the seat. Again, down low, moving this heavy weight down low and forward in the vehicle. We're going to talk a little bit about the chairs and tables that we selected for this trip. I'm not going to convince you in any way that this is the kind of chair that you should buy for overland travel. It's the kind of chair that I wanted on this trip. So this is made by Melville and Moon. It's a canvas chair. They're a little bit on the pricey side. They're not out of reach, but they're a little bit on the pricey side. They're made from wood and canvas and leather, and I love them. And I'm not going to try to tell you to buy them for any other reason than I like it. So chairs are great, super comfy. And then there's also a table. It's probably the camp table that would take the longest to set up, but it is also the one that has leather and wood and canvas, and it looks just great in camp, and it perfectly holds my gin and tonic at the end of the day. So it's just for fun. These are fun pieces. These are items that bring a warmth and a degree of adventure and legacy and history to a trip like this. This is a little bit of hearkening back to early travelers in Africa where they would use furniture like this. So it's fun to bring it along, and I'm enjoying it.